Hey, team players, welcome back. And isn't this a great post-Thanksgiving day? Unless you're in Minnesota and everyone is trying to actively run away and quit. That's what's going on in Minnesota. We're here to get your team into the playoffs. If you're already there, get you positioned to win this whole championship. That's the time of the year. It's winning time. It's what we've been building for this whole time. And let's bring it home. So, yeah, Bob, super excited for today. Lots of stuff happening since we were last here. I mean, man, it's been, almost 2 weeks for me. And the league has gone a little bit crazy. Who would have thought that Minnesota could have gotten worse at quarterback? But here we are. And I actually think I want to start there because I like starting with the disasters. And we can't always talk about the Jets. So
that's one way to say it. My God.
Watching Minnesota implode, and more importantly, watching J-Jeff do nothing has been so infuriating for not just myself, but all the other J-Jeff owners out there. Because he was a guy that, full disclosure, you guys all saw me throughout this time promoting as a guy to get. He was a cheap buy when McCarthy came in. You were always on the don't. This is like one of the disagreements. I'm starting here, Bob. I'm acknowledging that you were right off the bat. And J-Jeff, possibly the best receiver in football, is letting me down, and it's not his fault.
The interesting thing about Minnesota, right, is that when we look at them as a team, there was just all this talk and throughout fan bases and throughout the fantasy football world that that this coach could do anything with any quarterback and be successful. And it's starting to see that maybe you have to have just a tad bit of talent to start with for him to actually teach you something. So, I mean, when you look at Sam Darnold, Sam Darnold wasn't by any stretch of the imagination a bad quarterback coming out or exceptionally terrible with the Jets. I mean, he played bad, but a lot of players play bad when they're on the Jets, right? Then you go to Minnesota and he looked great. Well, you look good when you have good, talented players around you and you can sling the rock like Sam Darnold can. He's proving that he can continue to do that in Seattle when given the opportunity to do that. Now, when you look at Max Brosmer and you look at J.J. McCarthy, there are so many things because when Wentz was healthy, this team looked good or good enough to be fantasy relevant, right?
Yeah.
But now we can't even take advantage as fantasy football enthusiasts, right? We can't even take advantage of a good fantasy football playoff schedule for wide receivers like Addison and like Jefferson because the quarterback situation is terrible. Like you said, we went from getting 2 to 3 interceptions to getting 4 interceptions and less than 100 yards passing. I mean, this is a nightmare scenario for the Vikings. The fact is also that back in the offseason, they tried to keep Daniel Jones, but they gave Daniel Jones, I believe, an offer that was more money. But Daniel Jones decided to walk anyway to the Colts.
Well, Daniel Jones knew he could be a starter and clearly delivered.
And you look at it and you say, right now, they're going to go out there and they're most likely going to go out there and get a veteran presence at quarterback. And they're going to go out there and they're going to be able to win games next year. And this is not going to be
Mason Rudolph.
This is not going to be super detrimental for the long-term plans of Minnesota. But man, I do think that they're going to be looking for another rookie probably this year. They're going to go out there and get a veteran quarterback. And it's just
I think they're going to get a veteran. I think there's going to be a lot of teams super interested in the bidding war for Mac Jones. And it wouldn't surprise me if Minnesota brings it home. But that being said, that's enough talking about sad teams throwing the balls over their shoulder for pick sixes. And anyone who had Seattle's defense, man, just walk away with the money. But we're going to start up here with the questions. We're getting fired up. By the way, some of you watch us horizontally, some vertically. We love you both, whichever one you're at. So you might see questions come on the screen that were from the other one. It's part of life. We are an equal opportunity answer solver here on Local Football Flavor. KJ, you're kicking us off here today. What should the expectations for Drake London and
Jesse.
Mike Evans if they come back before the playoffs? Well, before the playoffs would I don't think I have a lot of expectations for Evans until I see him get his feet wet. Because Evans in particularly, I saw how long it's taking, if it will ever happen, for Godwin to get back into the lineup. And I need to see it cement before I give you a playoff start for Evans. Drake, on the other hand, I'm not that cold on. So, Bob, I know you love Drake a whole lot more than me, but
yeah, no, I mean, what I'm looking at for Drake London more so is I'm definitely looking at Kirk Cousins and saying, okay, there are instances in time where he can look really, really bad. And there are instances in time where, he is not he's not capable of pushing the ball as far down the field as they need for this team to be successful in the short term, right? And so when I look at his stat line yesterday, and you see 21 for 33 for 234 yards and a touchdown. So let's ask ourselves, like, okay, if Kirk Cousins was able to continue to push the ball down the field, where would these targets be going? Well, Kyle Pitts caught 7 passes yesterday, and
that's a bad sign.
And wide receivers totaled for less than 8. So I'm looking at this and saying that a guy like Drake London and his talent level, he can elevate himself and he can elevate the quarterback that he's playing with to a degree. But I'm not super comfortable in that kind of like, oh, am I really excited when Drake London comes back? Because as you know, it usually takes a little bit of time coming back from the injury, depending on an injury, for a player to be relevant. And by the time that we see that maybe that's happening, you're getting the Cardinals and the Rams. And those two defenses, we did see Bryce Young, they were able to throw on the Rams, and they beat the Rams the other day. But what I do feel is that these games, the Cardinals, the Rams, and the Bucs, if London comes back this week and shows us something good, then those games are going to be very competitive. And I don't think that London is going to be out of the game plan by any stretch of the imagination. But I do think because they want to cover up for a little bit of Kirk Cousins' inadequacies, that they are going to push more Bijan and more Algier coming up in the next 4 weeks. And I think that will probably equate to maybe Drake London getting slightly less targets than we want him to, but still being a wide receiver 1 with upside. I just think that the game plans are going to be different. Now with Mike Evans, Baker Mayfield also played hurt yesterday, and there's more target competition. So one of the things that always buoyed Mike Evans was that he was one of the primary beneficiaries of getting touchdowns. That's probably not going to be the case once he comes back. So a stat line that you could probably see from Mike Evans when he returns is like a 4 for 40. Which is 8 points, which is like not something exciting. I do think that London has a higher ceiling. So I'm slightly more excited for Drake London than Mike Evans, and he's the guy that I would probably lean into if I had the choice between them.
And again, we always go longer on the first quick hitter of the day than the other ones, but I'm going to leave it with this extra final thought. Tampa's still playing for something, and Atlanta isn't. And because of that, I see it's much more probable that Mike Evans gets nursed into the system back into it.
Right.
So I definitely want to leave a game off for him. Where Atlanta, it's just show me what you got before you get fired. And that's just the way it is there.
Now, in regards
I know that you were just researching Harrison before we started here. What is the deal with Harrison's injury? KJ also has Mike Wilson on his roster.
Yeah, so for anybody holding Marvin Harrison Jr. or anybody holding on to Michael Wilson, we're going to have to wait for the MRI. So as you know, we do follow a doctor on TikTok who has a lot of information. Feel free to check him out, Nathan. But when I look at this, we say, hey, you have this heel injury. You came out, you tried to play through it. It didn't turn out well. Now, depending on the type of heel injury, you're going to experience a couple different outcomes, right? And typically speaking, the MRI is going to tell them a lot about if he's going to be able to play through this injury or not. And I think that we can't make that decision until that MRI comes out. And his practice is not really going to matter. He's probably not going to be practicing the next 2 or 3 days. And then if he does play, it's going to be a game time decision. So we're not really going to get any information anytime soon about that other than the MRI. The MRI is going to tell us, is he good to go for at least trying this week, or is he out? And we're going to know that.
But KJ, the one thing you do got to know is that when Harrison's not playing, Wilson's they're force feeding it to him.
Wilson to the moon, man. Trey McBride, also, Joe. Hey, I just want to say,
Trey McBride caught a ball over the middle. What? It was crazy.
You've hated Trey McBride when he's attached to Kyler Murray, but attached to Jacoby Brissett, he's the top PPR player over the last
he's great with Brissett.
6 weeks. So it goes to show you how bad Kyler Murray is for the Arizona Cardinals.
And let me put this other point out here, Bob, because not that Brissett is the greatest quarterback in the world. Brissett is a below-average NFL quarterback. That's how bad Kyler Murray has been holding back this whole offense, but especially McBride.
Now, as it goes to your thoughts here about going with Trey Lance, I cannot get behind Trey Lance this week. I mean, I think it's potentially a heads up.
Trey Lance is the Bigsby of quarterbacks. Everyone wants him to be a thing. He ain't a thing.
I think it could potentially be an interesting play, but I'm not entirely 1,000% sure what direction they would want to go once all their because Omarion is speculatively coming back this week. If Justin Herbert is definitely a no-go and they bring in Trey Lance can perform adequately, but I don't know how much of the game plan or how much of the playbook that they're going to have.
His game plan is going to be hand the ball off.
And against Philadelphia, I don't see it as being a beneficial start. So I'm going to stay away from Trey Lance this week. I do think that there are other better plays, and Trey Lance isn't one of them.
I mean, just think about it like this. Trey Lance sucks under pressure, and they don't have either of their starting tackles. How's it going to work out?
Yeah. He probably will run a decent amount if given the opportunity to do that. You could probably see something like 50 or 60 yards on the ground.
He's not as he used to be.
I mean, again, I don't see it as being a play that I would want to make as I, head into the playoffs. In terms of this question here, K9 or Harvey, I do think that this is a really interesting question, especially because both of these players are in timeshares that vary their focus from a game-to-game basis. But what we did see is that RJ Harvey, in even a limited amount of carries that he had, comparable to Walker, is that he's the guy that's going to most likely be the touchdown guy.
Oh, sure. Whereas
for Seattle, Charbonnet is the touchdown guy unless Ken Walker is going to break one off in any capacity. If Ken Walker does that, he's probably going to have a better game than RJ Harvey. But for the fact that when they lean a little bit more towards the run here for the Broncos, you could easily lean yourself more into RJ Harvey. Now, looking at the schedule going forward, the Commanders are nothing to write home about in terms of a defense. That game should not have been as close as it was, but it was. We come down and we look at the schedule for the next 3 weeks for the Broncos. It's going to be the Raiders, the Packers, and the Jaguars. And while none of these defenses are exceptional at stopping the run, I do think that the Broncos in a competitive game will probably use RJ Harvey and the running backs a little bit more to kind of not give Jordan Love any more room or Trevor Lawrence any more room. So I'm leaning more on RJ Harvey over the next couple of weeks, just because there's a little bit more touchdown upside there with the carries all being the same. How do you feel about that, Joe?
So the reason I'm going to go K9 is I believe in Seattle's running game more than Denver's now. Ever since Dobbins got out, it's just not working there. And last night they were playing a horrible run defense, and you should have gotten a lot more out of it than you did. I think we're going to see a lot more game scripts with K9 because Seattle, good defense, strong passing attack, running out the end of the game. I believe that's just much more likely rest of the season moving forward that I'm on K9.
And I get that. I'm all with you for that. He hasn't been super efficient in running the ball. None of those players have been super efficient.
Dynasty wise, on the opposite though, because K9's on his way out of the league and Harvey's just going to take off.
But what I will say, when we look at Walker, just a final thought on Walker, right? He did play the majority of the snaps this week. So he played 55% of the snaps. Now, when you look at that comparison, what does that look like from a snap-by-snap basis? It's 37-26, but he got out-carried again by Charbonnet. So it's not necessary that Walker is going to be closing out the games. Charbonnet could close out a game too. Now, when you look at R.J. Harvey, on the other hand, R.J. Harvey had 33 snaps to Beatty, 18, and Jaleel McLaughlin, 13. But he out-carried them pretty significantly. So that's another viewpoint to have.
Yeah, because in Denver, Harvey is a focal point. And that part's, I just believe in Seattle's offense. But we're getting sidetracked here, Bob. We got to keep it up.
Up by 20 tonight, Jonathan here.
Right now, screams.
The opponent has Diggs. Safer to play Wandale or Tracy, full PPR. Get 0.2 points per rush attempt and 1 point per first down. I think
I'm probably on Tracy then.
I think that it's still safe to play Wandale here. The reason I like Wandale a little bit more here is just because when we looked at the snap shares from last week and we looked at how the running game was split up, you will see that it's closer than the snaps are closer than they needed to be. Right. When you look at a player like Singletary and you look at a player like Tracy. So just coming out from the week prior, right, is that you had 20 carries by Tracy. He was on the field 58 snaps. Then every time Singletary was on the field, over half of the time he was touching the ball. 14 carries on 25 snaps. So if that were to go into Tracy's favor in this game, you could absolutely see Tracy having a better performance than Wandale. But the problem is that
especially when you're the team that Dart doesn't do good, which is what I'm personally on tonight.
In most games, though, New England has been winning, so they haven't been allowing much running game. And that's where I feel like this could fall, is that I'm not sure how long or how many times the Giants will be able to hold a lead. And for that reason, I do tend to lean a little bit into Wandale, where he should get peppered with targets against a team who is susceptible to pass.
I'm looking at Tracy for the targets and the route runs too. Dude, CC,
they had like
30
points. It was crazy.
Pick 6 in first quarter. It's always good.
Jonathan, I need to drop one. Waller, Schultz, or Andrews. I think it's safe to drop Mark Andrews. So
I actually would have said Waller.
I think it's safe to drop either of them. I think the best one of the bunch there is Schultz because he's getting reliable targets on a week-to-week basis. That is it. He doesn't have any touchdown upside, etc. Mark Andrews has touchdown upside, but the problem is that the Ravens don't look like they should.
Lamar's still hurt is the biggest problem.
And they're not – when they get into the red zone, yes, he's going to be usable. But they have 3 tight ends that all can catch touchdown passes. We know that Lamar loves to favor his tight ends in the red zone. The problem is they aren't getting to the red zone as many times as they've gotten there in the past. So if you needed to move on from one of these, it's very easy to move on from Andrews because when you look at Miami could be successful with Waller, and Waller and Andrews basically have the same kind of floor and ceiling where they're both very touchdown dependent.
Yeah, either way, you're not starting either one of them. I just personally lean towards Baltimore.
I would drop.
I know they have the Steelers twice and they'll destroy them. So that's that.
That's true. That's true too. Jonathan, do we get high hopes that St. Brown can make it back by week 15? I'm going to need him for my playoffs. I have
the IR for dude. You just got to hope and pray.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything to say that that he wouldn't be able to return soonish. He has a 1 to 2 week injury. So right now, if you're looking at a 1 to 2 week injury with a low ankle sprain, not a high ankle sprain, so that's good.
Maybe you are for 15. It's going to be a game time decision at the start of your playoffs, dude.
You should probably get him back by week 15, but it's most likely
definitely get him back for 16
for you. CC, I fired up AJ Brown this week. Love that for you. I did the same thing. But I know it's hit or miss. Who do you have more confidence in, AJ Brown or Tet in the playoffs?
AJ Brown, without a doubt. When you look at Tet's performance, looking there, he basically has broken play capability. And that's what he scored his touchdown on, which I think was like a 50-yarder or something like that. Again, you guys have heard me say this all year. I'm not a fan of Tet's game. I'm definitely not a fan of Tet's quarterback. And when push comes to shove, and now that they're having a real chance of making the playoffs, oh my God, I kind of threw up in my mouth a little bit. I see it much more likely to completely implode in Carolina than to build itself up. And I go off of my entire lifetime of history of backing up that Carolina will find a way to implode, and in doing so will be no points. On the other hand, Philadelphia has run incredibly well, and Philadelphia is back to where they were basically this time last year, this time the year before, and the year before that. Same sentence Bob has told you so many times. If they're playing zone coverage, A.J. Brown will rip them apart. If they're playing man coverage, it's Devontae Smith game. It all depends upon what they're facing and how quickly teams are willing to adjust. And that's just the reality of what we're looking at with A.J. Brown for the rest of the year. But Hurts is chucking it well.
These players are closer than most people would think in terms of value-wise. But when you look at
so much.
When you look at this, the way that these games could play out, right? You look at the next 3 weeks for the Carolina Panthers, right? Because they're on bye this week. So you look at it and you say, hey, they've got the Saints on the 14th, the Buccaneers, and then the Seahawks. Okay, that's your playoff schedule. And when I look at that and I say, okay, the Seahawks game is going to be competitive, the Buccaneers game is going to be competitive, but to what degree? Because Seattle can absolutely take advantage of quarterbacks that make mistakes. And Bryce Young is inconsistent, but the one thing that he's consistent in is making mistakes. So when you look at it and you say, if Tet is a touchdown-dependent guy, who he has been over the last 3 weeks, he did have that 130-yard performance. We do know that Bryce Young performs better against Atlanta than almost any other quarterback that we have seen. That you have a player here who is probably going to get, depending on the way that the game script works out, 4 to 8 targets, somewhere in that range on a week-to-week basis, and somewhere between 40 yards and 100 yards. He needs to get that touchdown to be super relevant. Then you look at the Eagles schedule and you say, okay, they play the Chargers, the Raiders, the Commanders, the Bills, and then the Commanders again, and that game doesn't quite matter. But that Bills game is one to take advantage of, right? The Bills game and the Commanders game are 2 games where I think that A.J. Brown could definitely outperform Ted. And the Raiders game, how much he's being used, that's very dependent. But I do think that A.J. Brown can outperform Tet in those games, and that's the reason why I tend to favor A.J. Brown. Not that Tet can't do it, but with Bryce Young's performances being very erratic, and yes, Jalen Hurts can be erratic as well, but it doesn't seem like they're going to force the ball to Saquon Barkley at all, whereas the Panthers have 2 running backs that they will oftentimes force the ball to. They are a more run-friendly team than the Eagles are this year, which is really wild to say. That's good to see you, Jesse. Is it me or does the Texas O-line look better? If so, is Stroud a viable streaming option? Stroud is always a viable streaming option for us.
Yeah. Part 2, yes. Part 1, maybe. For the quick hit answer for you, CC. It does look better, but I don't know if I'm putting any stock in it yet.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Is he a viable streaming option? Yes, he is a viable streaming option. But the thing is also that he's not a quarterback that often puts up huge multi-touchdown games. So when you look at it, the last game that he did that in was October 5th against the Ravens. And that was a time that the Ravens were like pretty terrible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's 4 touchdowns that he had. He usually tops up around like 2 touchdowns at his peak. If you take that 4 touchdown outlier out, 2 touchdowns at his peak, and somewhere in the range of like 240 yards. Is that startable? Yeah, it definitely is. When you look at the matchups coming up,
you just got to expect lower expectations out of him. And it's right into Josh's question here.
Definitely not expecting much, but yeah, he's definitely viable.
So like for he's given us 3 guys here: Brissett, Stroud, McCarthy here. And Bob, you just nailed it on its head about why I wouldn't be starting Stroud because it's too low of a ceiling. Brissett is chucking the ball to 2 people. It's going to be Mike Wilson and it's going to be McBride, and they're going to get garbage time touchdowns. See, Houston doesn't get the chance of garbage time touchdowns because their defense is too good. Arizona is not burdened with that luxury. So they're going to give yourself all kinds of garbage time touchdowns. I'm on Brissett there. I'm not even sure that McCarthy deserves to be discussed anymore.
Okay.
Everyone is quitting Minnesota.
Here's the thing you need to do, Josh. And this is what I'm saying. And this is what I've said about Brissett for the last 4 weeks now since Kyler Murray went down. They are passing the ball at a clip that is unheard of in the NFL. You can go to any stat website that you want. And I'm telling you, he's passing the ball like over 38 times a game. And anytime that there is that much opportunity, right? So they're passing the
38 isn't a big number in itself. It's relative to their total plays. The percentage is huge.
Right. So he's on the field. Yesterday he took 61 snaps and he passed the ball 40 times. So when you're passing that much and you're also moving the ball decently enough, you are going to have a chance to be very successful as a quarterback because you have plenty of opportunities to do that, whether it's in a game where you have the lead or in a game where you don't. And just as a way of thinking about that, right, is that when you go back to week 12, the week that was before, right, and you look at the Cardinals, what they did last time too, they had 82 snaps that Jacoby Brissett took against the Jaguars. And you look at it and you say, holy shit, that's a crazy amount of plays. Yeah, they might not be the best organization in football, but from a fantasy perspective, there is no way that I'm going to take 25 attempts from CJ Stroud or 20 attempts from JJ McCarthy when I'm getting 40 attempts that are good attempts.
And that's the name of the game. It's all about volume, and it's that straightforward. So Monangai, Bob has been on the bus with Monangai, and I'm just going to say he's right. And Monangai is the dude that Monty should still be. And the fact that they're basically being used in the same way, I mean, you have the complete opposite. One arrow is straight up, one arrow is straight into retirement or on the verge thereof. And Monangai is a guy for any dynasty I'm going out and getting. I guarantee you I overdraft him in best ball next year. Because the one thing about this coach is that they are respecting the fact that Caleb Williams cannot win a game, and Monangai runs that ball hard. He might end up being the best rookie running back when it's all said and done at the end of their second year. I get it. He's got
like when you look at Monangai, like he had 22 carries, and then you look at DeAndre Swift, and you say, oh, he had 18 carries as well. So this is like a 1A, 1B situation. This is basically this is what we wanted Seattle in terms of a fantasy production standpoint to be, and they're not. That's what the Bears
is the best running back tandem in football right now.
And you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, I could start both of these guys and still hit a decently high ceiling for the week because they both have the potential to get touchdowns. And the thing that we talked about weeks ago was Chicago, right? And buying into Chicago running backs because not only, number one, that was what they did best, but number two, they're winning games. They're on a huge win streak right now, 5-game win streak. They're at the top of their division. They are playing the Packers, the Browns, and the Packers again before they're playing the 49ers. The 49ers don't have
that's a rough stretch for running against them. I mean, for running backs, that's going to be a rough stretch.
It is, but they have both Swift and Monangai. So while you might not project both of them to do well each game, These are games that are going to be hyper competitive, and they're going to want to cover for Caleb Williams' potential mistakes. How do you do that? You do that by running the ball. How do you do that against the Browns? The Browns just lost a defensive tackle, but they also have Myles Garrett. Well, how do you get the ball away from Myles Garrett? You run the ball. So this is going to work in the Bears' favor. And I think from here on out, both of the Bears are going to be startable running backs continuing for the future. Unless I had someone that was light years better, I'd be starting Monangai. And honestly, I wouldn't start Ken Walker over him. I would start Monangai over Ken Walker. And that's
so
I know that's
I need to scare you guys something.
It's true.
This is a little aside here. I have a 6-month-old baby, and this kid can already know what's going on and what isn't. Every single time someone talks to him about the Indiana Hoosiers being ranked second in college football, his body rejects the notion and he throws up. Hearing all of this love about the Chicago Bears, I think I figured out where he has this gut reflex from. I just got to say that.
So I traded Amon-Ra.
I
traded Amon-Ra and Charbonnet away to a top contending team for Bijan. It's smart because Amon-Ra just got hurt.
That's a win now because he got hurt.
But I think it's a win now anyway. I mean, Bijan, again, he is going to continue.
I think it would have been a fair trade then. You obviously ran away with it because of the injury, but I think it was a fair trade at the time.
Yeah, I think it's way fair, but I always like Bijan. Should JSN owners be worried headed into the playoffs?
Injury, then it's cheating.
Darnold is fairly consistent with sharding the bed in December. Okay, let's talk about this for a moment.
He did it last year.
He can be consistent, and Seattle in general can fall apart towards the end of the season. This is a fact.
I'm not worried about that.
But what I want you to understand is that the Vikings game was not competitive to any stretch of the imagination. And when we look at when a game is competitive, he did throw 4 interceptions against the Rams 2 weeks ago. But we look at what's on the schedule right now. The schedule looks Falcons, Colts, Rams again, and then Panthers. You could see another game, maybe week 16, where he throws 2 or 3 interceptions against the Rams, but I doubt he makes the same mistakes again. And against the Panthers, he's probably going to throw 1 or 2 interceptions as well. The Falcons and the Colts, I'm not worried about him at all. At all. I think that he could have 260 yards, 2 to 3 touchdowns in those games. So am I worried about JSN? No. From this perspective, it was a bad game at the worst time for JSN. But he has been hyper-targeted by Sam Darnold when they have been working to win games. So by no stretch of the imagination am I worried about one of the best wide receivers in football right now. Just to let everybody know, right? They took 64 snaps. He was on the field for 55 of them, but they basically didn't even need to do anything while playing offense. They just needed to continue to run the ball. Run the ball, keep it away from Minnesota, and do what they needed to do. So am I worried? No, not at all. Not at all. Josh, PPR for week 14, start 2 running backs, 1 flex. Saquon, Marks, Monangai, Hampton, Christian Watson, BTJ. Well, again, I'm on the Monangai
3 running backs, dude.
You're not getting me off the Monangai bus, okay?
Nope.
Secondly, if Trey Lance has to start and Omarion Hampton is back to a full complement of snaps, you start Hampton. So at this point, speculatively on Monday, I'd be on Monangai and Hampton. Then, as I look at it, I could easily see myself walking into Christian Watson. Here's the thing, guys, yes, can you bench Saquon Barkley? You could. He has not shown you that he is going to be the force of this team.
That's true.
Is it a bad play to bench him? Probably, because if he balls out and gets you 30 points, this is the Saquon Barkley paradox that we've been in all year, is that he hasn't gotten us the 30 points yet. It's coming, but when? And you don't know when that's going to happen because the majority of his looks in the past couple of weeks have been through the passing game, and those targets are still valuable, right? Mm-hmm. So when I look at it and I say, can you bench Saquon Barkley? Yeah, you can. Do you want to?
I can't go from the consistent volume of Barkley to 4 catches Christian Watson. This is the fundamental reason I can't get on Watson's bus. And that's it. J-Mo, on the other hand, I'm buying like crazy, but that's a side story.
I get what you're saying, but I also you also have to understand this. When I'm comparing these players
all year about the Packers' inconsistency touchdowns to receivers, and I know that Kraft is out there.
I'm there. I'm there with you.
I can't go with the lack of volume of Watson. I just can't.
But what I'm saying is that you look at Saquon Barkley the last couple of weeks. I'm going to read you his stat lines, Joe.
Oh, I know it's rough. I'm not fighting. I know it's rough.
It's more than rough.
As a flex.
It's more than rough. You look at his yardage totals and his usage, Joe. He has been getting 0 touchdown upside. He had 22 carries against Green Bay for 60 yards and 3 targets for 40 yards, no touchdowns. So he got 13 points in PPR against Green Bay. He got 8, 9, 10, 10.7 against Detroit. Against Dallas, he got, 13, 15. And then against the Bears, he was at 5. So, I'm looking at this from the perspective of, if you think that Saquon Barkley can get the touchdowns needed to be super relevant, then you play Saquon Barkley. But what I'm seeing from Christian Watson is that he does have touchdown upside in a limited volume passing offense. I get it. 4 catches and 80 yards plus a touchdown is going to be pretty similar to Saquon Barkley's volume aspect. So from your perspective, if Saquon gets that volume and gets the touchdown, yes, he's going to be a better play than Christian Watson. But he hasn't gotten that touchdown yet. So if you wanted to, you could
answer the other ones. I cannot do marks against Kansas City. I'm not touching that.
Yeah.
And BTJ, I mean, we just saw Myers go nuts in Jacksonville. Maybe that helps BTJ. I don't know. BTJ to me has to be the biggest disappointment for round 1.
He's done, man. He's this season. I'm not starting him again. There's no reason to start him, unless
I hope he slips to the 5th round next year, though. I would pick him.
I'd start Wan'Dale over him right now. That's where we're at. But yeah,
so that's basically
Monangai and Hampton is fine, but Monangai, Hampton, and Christian Watson, I think, is a good play as well. What about is the Bucs defense a good start against the Saints?
Yes.
I don't think it's a bad start.
I mean, the Saints are going to produce a little, but the Bucs defense is in win now mode. They need to win the division. That Carolina win is surprising. I see them doing something crazy stupid, especially with the Baker hurt.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could see yourself walking into a couple of sacks, and maybe an interception of Tyler Shook. The yardage, they're going to put up some yards, but is it going to be something that you're going to be like, oh, the Bucs defense is going to be the worst defensive start on the week? No, they're going to be just fine. I think that depending on how that game works out and how Bucky Irving and looks in practice over the upcoming week is going to depend a lot on how much they give
on Sunday,
on how much they give the ball to the Saints back and forth, because there's a likelihood that they score a lot of touchdowns and the Saints end up in catch-up mode for some of that game. The Dolphins had a great number against Tyler Shook this week too. So I think that the Bucs defense is a good start. Is it the best start on the slate? I don't think so. What do I do with BTJ, Odunze, Pittman, Rico, and Jalen Warren, Frosty? I need 20 from May as well. I think you can get 20 from May tonight. What am I doing with these guys? These are guys, like we've talked about all season, that they can get volume and spike weeks depending upon how the game script and the quarterbacks are playing. I think Jalen Warren's going to continue to be fine. This week, the Steelers had a lead for some of that game, and then they just pissed it away. So,
for the fifth time this year, they've had a lead at halftime and lost.
And what happens is that, when you stop running the ball or when you do something stupid like that, you're going to lose the game. So hopefully Mike Tomlin's this fifth time's the charm, and they've learned that they should continue to keep running the ball in the second half of games with Jaylen Warren, and they might win again. So I think Jaylen Warren's fine. Rico Dowdle's fine too. The carries favored Rico Dowdle again this week. It's just that it wasn't his time to shine, and Chuba got the fantasy points that Rico could have had as well. So I think Rico's fine.
Very encouraged by that.
What?
I was very encouraged by that. As someone who's riding the Rico shouldn't be on the field bandwagon.
As a Chuba guy, you got to be ecstatic.
I like me some Chuba, man.
But when I look at Rico and I see that, like, okay, yeah, he's down to 27 snaps. Chuba took 38, but the carry still favored Rico at 18 to 17. It's close. He ran less routes. Now, this could be something, but it could also be nothing. I think when you look at what this team wants to do to win, I think that both of those players are going to see some relevancy down the stretch. I still like Rico, but I'm not as confident in him at this moment in time. Now, Pittman, Odunze, and BTJ, they're basically the same. Sometimes they're going to get the volume. Sometimes they're not. I think that I'd rather, out of these three players, that I'd rather roll into Michael Pittman. But with Daniel Jones being injured, I could see that Odunze would be a better play, and BTJ is struggling. So what do I do with them? There's not much you can do. You got to just really pick which one has the better matchup in the week, and hopefully it hits, and not be angry at yourself that one of the other ones popped off, because all these guys are very similar to one another right now in terms of what they're going to do from a week-to-week basis for you. Quincy, 13-0. Let's fucking go. Mike Evans is coming back. Would you drop Franklin for Mike Evans? What do you think, Joe?
I drop Franklin for Mike Evans. Yeah, because I know when Mike Evans gets going, he's going to be a dude. Franklin's had moments, but that whole trying to get inside Sean Payton's head when he doesn't have a guaranteed Hall of Famer is rough, because he'll just keep searching and searching and searching, and I feel like that's what's happening in Denver. And Franklin might be found, but he might not. He might just be that forgotten toy. Time for the Island of Misfit Toys. That's about to come on TV nonstop, and I think Franklin might belong there.
I mean, okay, so his snap count went diminished from previous playing time to this week. So that's not encouraging by any stretch of the imagination, right? Is it worth it to potentially hold on to him for another week? I don't see a problem with holding on to Franklin for another week. I do think that for all things the same, pardon me, I think that Franklin and Evans, when Evans comes back and is healthy again, they project probably very similarly. Like that four catches for 40 yards, maybe you break one deep. I don't think it's any different between the two. They both would have potential touchdown upside. I tend to lean Franklin a little bit more because we know he's healthy. And I always like to take the more healthy player out of the grouping of players. So I'd be on Franklin still, but if you wanted to drop him, sure. Is London Cook? Who's to say? When we look at,
yes, he was always cooked.
When we look at Drake London, we were talking about him earlier and talking about he has a chance to play this upcoming week. And is that encouraging? Take it or leave it, right? I do think that when he comes back, that he'll be okay. I'm not expecting a 100-yard game out of him like he had when he was prior to this with Michael Penix. But I do think that he can have a great game, and I would rather have Drake London on my team, like I said earlier, than Mike Evans. So, personal thought. Rough night in Pittsburgh yesterday against Buffalo. Is it time for Tomlin to go? Joe.
Yes.
This doesn't have a quick hit. Nick knows where the heart is, man. They were booing Renegade down on the field.
They were booing during Renegade. They also were chanting Fire Tomlin.
Hold on. I got to say this because this is something you and I have discussed since before we
I have two answers.
When
I
we
didn't have answers before.
All right, so there's a local bar. There's a local bar by us that we used to do trivia at, guys. And this is just a side. We used to do trivia at this bar called Mario's, and we were friends with the DJ who did the trivia night.
Love you, Arnell. Shout out.
Shout out Arnell. Yep. It was absolutely a great time, and almost all the time during Lent, Joe would drink wine.
It's also 7 years ago we were having these debates.
Have wine and steak. We would be drinking beer. We would be having a great time. We would be getting a bunch of answers wrong, a bunch of answers right. Just really depended on what was going on. But inevitably, every single time, we would talk about why it was time to fire Mike Tomlin. And these, I remember very vividly. Joe came up multiple times and goes, Bob, fire him. Then what are you going to do? He's one of the best coaches right now. What are you going to do? Again, 7 years ago, right? Before we had kids, before we were married, before I was married. And I look at it and I say, this team is in no better a position for being successful than they were 7 years ago. And now we have a full cycle of Tomlin's guys. We have a full cycle of Tomlin's guys. And what we are seeing that is either, Nick, from a coaching capacity standpoint or a player capacity standpoint, that this team is not mentally prepared to play 4 quarters of football. This team is not physically prepared to play 4 quarters of football. And this team doesn't have the grit of a Steelers organization that everybody in Pittsburgh knows from the 1970s, 1990s, et cetera, and even from the Big Ben years, that the Steelers grit, right?
Oh, dude, this 2008 defense won this defense all time.
Now what we see is a team where the fan base, although they get drunk and sad a lot, this fan base is true to their team. And while there might not be a successful coach out there that could potentially replace the all-time, Jeff Fisher kind of like 9 and 8 kind of ranking, right? I look at it and I say, yes, it's time for him to go, because this organization can be successful. But the Rooneys and Tomlin, both sets, need to take a hard line look at what they want this organization to do, because the fan base ebbs and flows through a Steelers win or a loss. And when they win, and you guys know this, I've said this before, at the beginning of the season, they look like shit. Then they had a little run, and then they look like shit again.
Yep. You see Bob angry.
And it seems to be that they might just be shit. It just might be shit. And the fact that we have spent, as an organization, that the Steelers have spent millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of dollars to have a world-class defense. And you ask, explain to me how every other coach wouldn't be on the hot seat, like LaFleur, like, McCarthy, all these other guys. When their teams act poorly, when their teams are poor playing, they become on the hot seat. But Mike Tomlin controls the controllers. Well, no, you don't, Mike Tomlin. You don't control anything. You allow your players to do whatever the hell they want, and they suck. The organization is in shambles, and they're no better than where they were at 7 years ago, Joe. Tell me I'm
wrong. You can make an argument they're actually worse. But the simple fact is that for him never having a losing season, over his last 17 games played, they are 6-11. And they have a much greater chance of going 6-11 this year than they do to getting to
this. Thank you, CC.
But here is the answer, Bob. I have finally gotten someone who is emphatically would be better. He actually had coached here before. He's a prior head coach, but he's too old for the Steelers ever to hire him, and that is Flores. I would bring in Flores from Minnesota in a second to take over this team.
But the thing is that I
don't question, Nick. It absolutely is time for him to go. It probably was time for him to go last year, and Rodgers better go with him.
Something needs to change. Nick, I'm planning to hold the Pats, Browns, and Bucks defense for the playoffs. Is this a decent enough move? I think it's fine.
The Browns are a little bit less, but
yeah, I'd be a little less on the Browns because we just saw that they are, because the offense isn't as good as it needs to be. The Browns are going to have their defense on the field.
Could cost you a shutout.
That's not going to be great. So I think the Pats and the Bucks would probably be the ones that I would lean on there. Can we even trust the Lions injury reporting after premature Ragnow announcement? I'm also worried about Amon-Ra. I think it's fair to be worried about Amon-Ra. Like I said, it is most likely that he shows back up week 16. So if you need to, whatever you need to do to work magic to get your lineup to week 16, that's probably where I see him at right now. Is Terry McLaurin and JD5 pickups? If both are available on waivers in my league, I'd have to drop Daniel Jones, Diggs, Aaron Jones, Benson, T. Higgins, or Hampton. Well, Aaron Jones is droppable. He has no touchdown upside in an offense nowhere. So if I wanted to pick up Terry McLaurin,
the other ones,
I could.
And since you're a one quarterback league, you're not benching Daniel Jones. So Scary Terry is the one I would give the floater to.
Yeah, I'd pick up Terry McLaurin and I'd drop Aaron Jones. If you wanted to pick up Jane Daniels, you've held on to Benson so long. I think you could drop Benson depending on your running back situation.
But even going back to what Bubba said earlier in the show, they ain't running the ball. So getting Benson back is not what he was before.
Dart or Daniels for the playoffs, 4 points for touchdown.
You've got to keep them both because Dart might get knocked out at any given second.
That's what Joe's hoping. That's what Joe's
hoping. That tonight.
I think Jackson Dart is going to be a fine play moving forward. Like Joe said, the injuries are would be problematic, but it's not like either of these quarterbacks are ever going to come out unless they're hurt. So when I look at the schedule going forward for Jackson Dart, I see the Patriots tonight, and then the Giants December 14th, the Vikings December 21st, and then finishing the season in the fantasy season with the Raiders. That is a delectable schedule, if ever there was a delectable schedule for a quarterback. So yes, I'm on Jackson Dart over Jane Daniels. Bucky might be the best IR stash since Puka last year. Can guys like Hampton and Benson be immediate needle movers off of IR? I think Hampton can. I don't think Benson can. And the reason why I don't think Benson can is that I don't find that he's more exceptional in anything than anything that they're producing right now. Is he better? Yeah, he's a better player, but is he more exceptional than what they're trotting out on the field at the moment in time? Not truly. So like, especially when you're choosing to run the ball as much as they do as choosing to pass the ball as much as they do. And then you look at it and you say, Michael Carter and Bam Knight each had a good complement of snaps in this game. And so you look at it and you say, all right, well, will Benson outcarry them? There's a chance, but there's also a chance that they don't change the status quo. So a guy like Benson, while he's a great stash or potentially a good stash, he's probably going to need to have more time or more work in the offense to make himself be exceptionally relevant again. Whereas Hampton doesn't really have to do so much. I know we love Vidal, but again, once Hampton's back, Vidal is going to be relegated to RB2 and Hampton's going to be the guy. So with the quarterback situation with potentially Trey Lance and Justin Herbert, that shifts kind of the thinking that maybe they lean a little bit more on the running game with Hampton and Vidal maybe being both relevant. But Benson, if he doesn't play, the Cardinals are still the same team. If he does play, they're still the same team. It doesn't really move the needle at all. Quincy, I have Brissett. I heard Kyler Murray came off IR. Would you drop him for Jane Daniels? Or would you drop him for Jane Daniels? Would I drop Brissett for Jane Daniels? I would not do that until it was confirmed that Kyler is playing again, because I don't think Arizona looks any better with Kyler. Like, they look terrible with Kyler Murray. They look like a much better team with Jacoby Brissett. So I don't think they do that. I think they want to trade or get rid of Kyler Murray at the end of the season. I'm sure there's somebody else on your
Kyler
roster.
Murray's not going to be out of on next year, Bob.
I think there's somebody else you can drop on your team that's not Jacoby Brissett right now. And then I'd pick up Jaden Daniels. I'd drop somebody else. Who should I be in my starting lineup moving forward? It's a 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 flex league. I have Hurts, Frosty said, Rico, Jalen Warren, Chase Brown, Monangai, Chris Rodriguez, Lamb, BTJ, Odunze, Pittman, and McBride. Obviously, McBride's over there at the tight end. Hurts is your quarterback. At your running backs, it's going to be Chase Brown and Warren for me at the 2 running back slots. My flex is going to be Monangai. Chris Rodriguez is who he is. I mean, he's again, it's another player. It's another player that's not exceptional by any stretch of the imagination, but also is getting looks in an offense that's starving for playmakers in the running back room, right? He did not get the majority of the snaps, but he did get the majority of the carries. Again, he's also a touchdown producer sometimes as well. I don't think that I'm starting him. So it's going to be Chase Brown, Warren, and Monangai as my 2 running backs and my flex. And then as my wide receivers, of course, you're going to go Lamb. And then, like I said earlier, it's honestly dealer's choice about which one of those other wide receivers has the best matchup and where do you project their quarterbacks to be passing the ball a lot. Odunze, maybe you're off Odunze because if they're running the ball 36 to 40 times a game.
Yeah, Pittman's the logical choice out of that group when you're building a lineup because you can't be. So basically, the way that Bob is phrasing this is that your flex comes down to Monangai or Odunze. Do you think they're running or throwing under Chicago? That's basically how you would look at it, with Pittman being your second receiver.
I think it's fine to do something like this. If they dropped Hubbard and Algier, I've submitted a waiver claim. Like I said, I think Atlanta's going to be running the ball more than you think to cover up inadequacies out of the quarterback. And also, Carolina runs the ball enough to cover up the inadequacies of their quarterback. So both of these teams are
and Hubbard's
similar in that same capacity. Do I drop Loveland for Fannin Jr. for a depth tight end? I think that I would have told you this 7 weeks ago. We had that stretch of Loveland having like 2 or 3 games where he was very relevant. But yeah, I'd take Fannin as my backup tight end to Bowers. Shedeur seems to be comfortable with him, and I think that that's fine moving forward. Hubbard, Nick's We Buy here says Hubbard isn't worth a pickup with a backfield that will be unpredictable moving forward. Here's what I'll say to that. He is worth a pickup to the degree that if you think Rico, if an injury were to happen and you're sitting there week 16 and you want a guy that would slot in for 75 to 80% of their team's total carries or targets or whatever, I think that Hubbard is a fine pickup. He's not a guy that I'm playing. I'm not playing him this week. But if something were to change or bang out in a different direction there in Carolina, you could have yourself a potential nice little playoff run with Hubbard if you had him on your team. I wouldn't be dropping anybody important, though, to pick up Hubbard. Just keep that in mind. I want Monangai, but I have too many studs at running back. CMC, Chase Brown, Swift, and Henderson, and Harvey. Wide receivers, I need help. Garrett Wilson on IR. I have Rice, Igbuka, and Franklin only. I love running backs. Should I just hold? Yeah. I mean, unless you can absolutely pull off a crazy trade, then sit with what you got. I mean, those running backs, the running backs that you have, you could, I mean, if you had like a third quarterback or a second quarterback that you want to drop and you want to pick up Monangai, sure. The reason for picking up Monangai is so that he doesn't have to play against you, right? Even if you aren't playing him, he doesn't play against you when it comes time for the playoffs. So I think that's the important thing to remember is that you might not be able to start him, but you also don't want to play against him. So that's my viewpoint on that. Right. I'm sure you have a player on your roster that you could, and you're 13-0. So you're 13-0 for a reason. CC, let's break it down. Nico versus AJ Brown. If you could only start one, who brings home the championship? Joe, we'll start with you. What do you think?
How are you making this a deep dive? It's really what I'm trying to figure out, dude. You know my love for Collins.
We're not talking about love. We're not talking about love. Give us.
Yeah, no,
some
the answer is Collins. He's going to give you a much higher floor and he can match the ceiling. Like, it's not even close. A.J. Brown has a week where he can completely disappear and you're out of your playoffs. Collins is a consistent producer. His quarterback's back and the line is getting better. What do you not want about Collins? Not to mention, it is a great situation that they have down there in Houston. He's probably in a this week's not your playoffs, but he's probably in a shootout this week. And if they pull the upset in Kansas City, which I personally think they will, they are now in a driver's seat where they can be in the playoffs. And it's going to happen on the arm of Stroud. To me, I am all in on Collins. I'm not even thinking about this. It's not a debate. Like, to me, A.J. Brown conversation comes into play when we're starting to talk about the legit tier 2 or tier 3 guys. Like, I'm not even, like, here's other guys I have ahead of A.J. Brown without thinking about it. George Pickens. Like, that's the tier. I got both of the San Diego quarterback or receivers, I believe, are ahead of A.J. Brown. I would take QJ over him as being the second one there. So I am not big on A.J. Brown. I got bit by him. I got off the bus, and I liquidated him everywhere I could. Collins, on the other hand, I love. So, yes, that is where I am at. Give me the team that's hungrier, the better player, the younger player, and the number one on his team every day.
So, the other way of thinking about this is when you look at the stats and you look at the matchups that of every team that's going out there, and you see who is playing who, right? So take a look at the schedule for the Texans. The games they got coming up are the Chiefs, Cardinals, Raiders, Chargers. Okay, Chiefs, Cardinals, Raiders, Chargers, and then we take a look at the Eagles, just like we talked about a little bit earlier. And the Eagles' schedule is also a prime schedule for some wide receivers. You got the Chargers, the Raiders, the Commanders, and the Bills. Now, thinking about this from a narrative standpoint is that you have two teams that one of them, when it comes to week 17, A.J. Brown may pop off. It could also be Devonta Smith. But when you look at the Texans as a team going forward as well, they're fighting for their lives for a playoff spot. And they are going to do everything in their power from a narrative perspective here to win these games. And these are all winnable games against the Chiefs, the Cardinals, the Raiders, and the Chargers up until, week 18 against the Colts. And so in order to win these games, they are most likely going to utilize the best targets on their team, which is Nico Collins, which is Woody, which is Dalton Schultz. And if you think about how many times, if we take a look at the Texans in general here, right? And we say, how many times a game how many times last week did the Texans throw the ball? All right. And we see that CJ Stroud threw the ball 35 times and completed 22 passes. Now, from an upside touchdown perspective, Nico Collins' upside from the touchdown perspective does have a cap to it because there is a way that Houston wins games where they don't have to throw the ball 35 times a game to win. And similarly, you could say a similar thing to the Eagles, but through a lesser capacity, right? Is that you can run the ball 22 times with Saquon. When you get into the red zone, it might all go through Jalen Hurts, and he might rush the ball in. Both of these players are this is why this question I think is interesting, because both of these players are very similar to one another in that if they maximize their targets in a game, both of these players have 120-yard upside plus 6 to 7 catch upside, right? Now, where are you going to get that? Like, how is that going to work out? So if we take a look at the stats throughout the last couple of weeks with guys like Nico and A.J. Brown, we have Nico here that, again, we'll just go back like 4 weeks here. 15 targets against Jacksonville. That was with Davis Mills. 10 targets, 3 targets against Buffalo, and then 10 targets again with the return of C.J. Stroud. amazing. That's what you want, right? That's what Joe's saying, is that in that perspective, it doesn't feel like there's a debate at all, because you look at those numbers and you say, oh, well, that's pretty freaking good, right? That's exceptional. Then you look at A.J. Brown. And when A.J. Brown spikes, he spikes. You look at the last 3 weeks as well, or 4 weeks. We go Green Bay, 3 targets, then 11 targets, 10 targets, 11 targets. So it's both of these players over the last 3 weeks have been hyper targeted in their offenses, depending upon what the coverages of the other defenses are doing. And so you look at it and you say, is there a pathway for both of these players to be very successful? And yes, there is. Now, A.J. Brown was more successful this week because he had 2 touchdowns. But if you give A.J. Brown the opportunity to go deep, somebody must have rang the bell down there and said, hey, we have A.J. Brown, by the way. Did you guys forget about that?
They've been throwing deep shots, so he just didn't run hard during the month of November.
So what I'll say is that I think both of these players are exceptional starts throughout the next 4 weeks of the season, 3 weeks of the season, right? Depending on your playoffs, right? The one that feels more comfortable is Nico, because you can write a game script where Nico and Jaden Higgins are going to be the only wide receivers that are going to be involved in the game. But walking into a game script for the Eagles is a little bit more disheartening when you look at A.J. Brown, is that there's multiple ways that the Eagles could win without utilizing A.J. Brown to his full capacity. But there are not as many ways that Houston can win if they don't use Nico Collins to their full capacity. So
that's the other reason for him.
That's the way of framing it, to say that Nico's probably the safer, higher floor guy, like you said, Joe. Whereas
he's also the higher upside guy.
Where A.J. Brown has the potential of having a higher ceiling, because, like I said earlier, it is not very likely that C.J. Stroud is throwing more than 2 touchdowns in a game, and it is very likely that Jalen Hurts could not do that as well, right? But if he does, they're probably going to go to A.J. Brown or Dallas Goedert. So I would tend to lean on Nico here, but I think that both are exceptional starts moving forward. Start one this week. I know you disagree with it because you don't like A.J. Brown. That's fine. We ride the wave. I've ridden the wave with A.J. Brown.
Hey, talk about riding the wave, Jason. I'm about to hit you this wave right here. This is how down I am on the AFC North. I'm riding Burrow until he's officially eliminated from the playoffs, because I think there's a chance on week 18 he sneaks in. I am riding Burrow throwing his way through hell, beating the Ravens again, and seeing it happen.
So, who's the better start this week? Joe has Burrow. I think that Burrow is a great play this week. Out of this listing of quarterbacks, I know Nick's had an overperformance from a yardage perspective, and Trevor Lawrence had a multiple touchdown game against the Colts. That Colts-Jaguars game is always a little bit interesting. It never really pans out the way that most people think it's going to go. So I tend to lean a little bit further away from Trevor Lawrence. And obviously, I'm not trusting Jayden Daniels this week if he were to come back and play this week. So yeah, I'm on Burrow, but I can easily see Nick's being a decent play. But I think among them all, Burrow is probably your best, safest start there. All right. Joe, you hit me up with that private chat there. Start 4.
Next one here for our tease. Start 4. The San Diego's running back, Neal or Kamara, Knight or Carter, Monungai. Then should I drop Sticky Ricky and or Tootin for Evan, Pollard, Spears, Vidal, Tesla, Wicks, Bird, and Browns wide receivers? All right. So the first one with the Chargers is pure health. Period. Go with that.
Everyone's healthy.
I'm not starting either of the Arizona ones. And I'm definitely starting Monungai. So I guess I'm starting both both New Orleans ones because I do not want to start.
Whoa! You are not starting two New Orleans.
I can't start. Yeah. Oh, dude, this is dirty. All right, so let me back this up. I think I'd rather start Spears than the Arizona ones.
Why?
So,
why?
I don't know. I feel like I'm fighting over Fs. Like Hampton, you might be starting Hampton and Vidal, quite frankly. You're definitely starting Monangai.
I'm going to say it right now. You aren't starting either New Orleans player. They're not, again, the touchdown
Arizona player.
Not worth it. The Arizona players are worth it to a degree because they're moving the ball down the field. Okay, there is touchdown equity that can be had.
Give it to them.
The ball down the field. It's a heads up play, Jason, that in a time that if they are coming back and Hampton's not fully 1,000% healthy, right? That you could see a split backfield with Vidal and Hampton. But is it as valuable this week against an Eagles run defense? It could be. I think you're starting whichever one of those running backs, Vidal or Hampton, is healthy. And whichever one you project to have the most carries. I think that it probably is Hampton this week if healthy. Then I'm on Carter because I do think that there is some upside there in terms of just getting into the end zone for a touchdown. I don't think he's going to get more than like 11 points, right? He's probably going to get 40 yards and a touchdown somewhere in there. Bam Knight has the same chance to do that. When Benson comes back, that changes a little bit. Now, Monangai is a slam dunk. You've got to start him. Then when you look at what's on the bench here, I think you are dropping Ricky Pearsall to make room for one of these players on your team. And I think that it's all dependent upon what you need, right? Pollard and Spears is just
he doesn't need another running back. I can tell you that definitively. He also showed me starting two of these, and two of these guys should be flex receivers.
It really is just bleh. I don't really want to invest in Tennessee.
I'm definitely picking on Mike Evans because you need to have some form of an upside here, Jason. And Evans could give that to you in your playoffs.
And I think
no doubt I'm picking up Evans.
Mitchell's usage was great. So like Wicks got the two touchdowns.
Yeah, I can see cutting Tootin for Mitchell.
Wicks got the touchdowns, but again, this is an offense, like I've said earlier.
I think that's a red herring.
Joe was saying
I don't want to invest in Wicks.
Joe was saying a lot about the low volume of the Packers in general, right? Is that you look at Wicks, he had 6 receptions, 2 touchdowns, which is a great stat line, 94 yards. He's not done that in the last 8 games. So that to me is interesting. Adonai Mitchell is also interesting because when you look at it, he had never done that before to that capacity. And you see that maybe he's a little bit more trustworthy, and he's one of the wide receivers, is one of the only wide receivers on the team. They could easily go back to running the ball with Jacobs. They could easily go back to throwing the ball to Dobbs and Christian Watson. I think that Wicks is not a guy that I'd be prioritizing this week. He could win you the week next week too, but I think I'd be on Adonai Mitchell there, and I'd probably drop Ricky Pearsall for Adonai Mitchell. And if you wanted to drop Tootin for any of the other wide receivers, I wouldn't drop him for any of the Browns wide receivers. But
I would go with Mitchell and Evans. I don't want to touch the Browns because they're trying to protect him. And that leads into the next question here of who would you rather start rest of the season, Brees or Judkins? To me, it's Judkins all day. First off, I think he's a better player right now than Brees. And more importantly, they are trying to protect Shador, and Judkins is how they have to do it. So I see a role for Judkins all day. The only way Brees Hall wins is if the Jets are competitive. And sure, they got a coach they love and they're fighting for out there. But at the end of the day, the Jets be the Jets for a reason. And you can never rely upon them to win anything.
I mean, for me, you guys know and understand that I'm a big Judkins stand for this season. Dylan Sampson just got hurt. And when I look at this from the perspective of volume wise, both of their volumes are pretty much the same. Judkins is going to get you slightly more carries, I think, on a week-to-week basis. Now, both have limiting touchdown upside. Judkins, it turned his way last week where he got a touchdown and looked good. Brees didn't. So I think when you look at it and you say hey, Could this be a kind of just one side of the same coin, right? And you look at it, it's like, I think both of them are good enough plays on a week-to-week basis. Breece did get the touchdown. I misspoke there. But I think that you're going to get probably a better look at Breece because of Tyrod going forward than you are going to get of Judkins. I think Judkins is going to have
you're going to first downs.
I think he's going to get a lot of volume. So if you're in like a first down league, potentially, something to think about. I would lean a little bit on Breece on this end because like I said to you a couple weeks ago, is that, Breece was the guy that you could definitely sell if you had good prospects. But Breece is also one of those guys where the volume's going to go where the volume can go. And Tyrod's a much better quarterback than Justin Fields, and it's giving Breece Hall better opportunities. But I like both. Jason, one league I have to buy. One league I need to win this week to get a buy. The third league, I win, and I'm in the playoffs. So 2 out of 3 secured. I love that, Jason. This is why you do multiple leagues, boys, just in case you don't make it in one. Or
it's also why you can be a regular here on Local Football Flavor, so you get in the playoffs a lot.
Start one. Burrow.
We already answered that one. It's Burrow,
Trevor, and Mariota. I think you out of that. It's a different grouping of players, Joe. But I think when you look at that,
Burrow.
When you look at that,
hey guys, you didn't tell me start one of quarterbacks. If Joe Burrow is in the list, unless Allen or Hurts is in it, the answer will be Burrow.
I don't know. Some players, some of them are different for me. Which 2 are the best bench stashes so far here? Tootin, Emmanuel Wilson, Corum, Pacheco, DJ Moore, Adonai Mitchell, Burton Browns. It's going to be Corum and probably Adonai Mitchell. Just because unless you project the Jets winning games, they're probably going to be throwing the ball a decent amount. Now, I'm not saying that Adonai Mitchell's going to replicate what he did last week.
No, but he's the best Jet on the field by far.
In Indy, he had like stone hands, and now like he doesn't. So like that's really cool to see. But again, from a volume perspective, if you're looking at where you want the volume to go, Kyron's banged up, so Corum could be a start next week, guys. Mm-hmm. With Adonai Mitchell, I think he's worth a start. And again, with the Bears in general, I think just the Bears are interesting from a pass catching perspective. Is that there's a chance that, like I said, that DJ Moore falls in the end zone for a touchdown, but that's not the norm. And Caleb only threw the ball 154 yards last week, and that's not going to be good for his pass catchers moving forward if that's going to be how they run the offense. So I would tend to lean into Corum and Adonai Mitchell. If you wanted DJ Moore, sure. But don't talk about the Browns wide receivers, guys. I mean, that is definitely a no-go from my perspective.
It's definitely disappointing.
All right, let's go here to this next one. See, this is where it changes. You could convince me, in all things being the same, if Daniel Jones' injury is not hampering him next week, that I could be convinced to start Daniel Jones, and I could convince myself to start Jacoby Brissett. Just because when I look at the matchup against the Rams, it's going to be hyper competitive, assumedly. There's a chance that he throws for 2 or 3 touchdowns. I think Joe Burrow also throws for 2 or 3 touchdowns.
I think Burrow throws for 4 the rest of the year. That's how much I'm on Burrow.
The Bills' rush defense is
4
much
game
worse.
Rest of the year.
The Bills' rush defense is much worse than their the Bills' rush defense is much worse than the Bills' pass defense. Mm-hmm. So keeping that in mind, I think that Chase Brown is absolutely an electric start, whereas the wide receivers, it could be
on the line. The ball's going through Burrow.
A little bit different. I agree with you, but I think it's interesting. Kittle on bye. Which tight end is the best this week? Ertz, Andrews, Taylor, Ingram, Barner, or Loveland? Well, I'm not going to get roped into Ertz having 10 receptions. I mean, that is a great stat line with exceptional usage. He could be the better play there. Ingram similarly had a lot of usage in this game, where in the past he hadn't been having any usage. Ask me how I know. So like I look at it and I say, all things the same, if Jane Daniels is coming back this week, I think you can lean a little bit into Zach Ertz. But I'm not really excited for any of those options this week. So I tend to lean Ertz a little bit more. And primarily leaning Ertz a little bit more is that, yeah, the Vikings offense sucks, but they're going to need to pass the ball to at some capacity because their running game isn't very good. So I would lean Ertz because I think there's more passing attempts in the pipeline this week there for Washington. What do you think, Joe?
So they're going to be losing more. There's no doubt about that. I'm still going to go with Andrews.
He has touchdown equity, so
he does, and they got the Steelers twice, and he's going to do it.
Well, this is just for this week. It's just for this week.
And he's got the Steelers this week at home in a must-win game for Baltimore.
Mick, how's it going? Ended up trading Judkins and Gadsden for Higgins. Won the 1 seed, almost locked up. Also, bear down, huge week for us. Mick, I'm excited for you. I'm excited that the Bears aren't as bad as Joe was projecting them to be at the beginning of the season. It's a nice.
I'm pretty sure Caleb Williams still is. You just have a coach who's smart enough and has enough clout to hide him.
I think a trade like that's great. Moving into a wide receiver that can be a wide receiver 1 on your fantasy team is exceptional.
Can't hide that.
Should I grab Mike Evans? Doubt I would start him again. It's all about preventing somebody.
But that's the right strategy. To finish your point there, if he shows promise 1 week, you might start him the next week. And that's how you got to treat Mike Evans. And that's how you should do this.
CC, on my big money team, I'm 11-2 and in first place. The 4th place team has Hurts, CMC, Puka, Devontae Adams. Am I bugging to throw the last game to fall to second as a strategic play? Even third is less potent. CC, here's the thing. We saw Puka throw up kind of an egg of a game by Puka standards this past week. Anything can happen on a week-to-week basis. I'm not throwing anything because it's not a guarantee that lineup is going to be super successful that week, or you could be playing yourself into a loss, and then all of a sudden you lose the next game and you're like, what the hell just happened? Right? You stay the course. I wouldn't play any shenanigans like that. Would you drop Tootin or Charbonnet or Jaden Higgins for Hubbard? I'd drop Tootin for Hubbard potentially. I see them as being not too dissimilar to one another.
I wouldn't drop Higgins.
Yeah, Jaden Higgins I'm keeping. I don't, like I said, I don't see them dissimilar from one another. If you believe Chuba Hubbard has a bigger advantage in that running back room for the Panthers, then you drop Tootin for Hubbard. But again,
I would do Tootin for Hubbard. To answer the question, Quincy, I would do that in a second.
If ETN gets hurt, Tootin then walks into a role where he's going to have.
Well, if ETN gets hurt, but I know Hubbard's getting the ball now. And that's basically
I have Juwan Johnson. Would you drop him for Waller, Schultz, Mason, Taylor, Bretton Strange, or hold? I love Juwan. Juwan is exceptional. The only guy I'd drop him for would be Schultz.
Yeah, I don't even think I would do that. I think I would hold Johnson.
Just because the targets are crazy for both of them. I think they average similar amounts of targets a game. I think it would be a lateral move, if that. My other quarterbacks we buy is Dak. I don't mind dropping Aaron Jones, but figured I could play him in the playoffs because of how good his running back schedule is. My running back room is Gibbs, Kyron, Hampton, and Benson. The only reason I'm saying that maybe you want to drop Jones is that he already is dealing with another shoulder injury. The schedule might be good, but the quarterback isn't good. It's not good enough. And Kyron with the injury, Kyron with the injury is a little bit scary because you could be walking in the playoffs with just Gibbs and Hampton. Knowing you have Dak, if you want to get rid of Daniel Jones to pick up Terry McLaurin to make your team better, you're probably not starting Daniel Jones over Dak. So I see a universe where that's okay. But also understand that there's going to be somebody in your league that's probably going to pick up Daniel Jones and start him right away. Yeah. So that would be where my concern is. But also if Jane Daniels comes back, I still don't think you're starting Jane Daniels over Dak either. So I don't think you need Jane Daniels one way or another. But again,
Jane Daniels over Jones.
But yeah, I could see you wanting to drop Aaron Jones. But if he's kind of like your backup to Gyron and whatnot, and both of them are currently hurt, doesn't really help you to hold on to him right now. Would you drop Jaden Higgins for Adonai Mitchell? No. I would not do that.
Still Jet.
I would not drop Jaden Higgins. Again, guys, we see with a player like Higgins, Higgins still was 5 for 65. Okay. And that's not going to change. Whereas Adonai Mitchell's numbers are probably going to fluctuate pretty wildly. I would not drop Higgins for Mitchell. I'd drop one of the other guys that we talked about. Should I go for Godwin or Evans on waivers? PPR 10 team Tingley. I know what Joe has said the whole show. I'm not going after either of them. I don't think that
I get it. But if you're going to go after either one, I'd go after Evans because I see Godwin isn't getting used enough.
Yeah. And Tingley, to end the show here, it's a lateral move. Both of these, Juwan and Schultz for me is the same. They're getting basically the same amount of targets with basically the same amount of yards. Yes, Deshaun Vele showed up this week for the Saints, but I don't see that as being something that sticks very well for a long time.
Vele has never stuck very long.
Pick whichever one you like. Pick whichever one has the better schedule. Personally, I think both are pretty much the same and are going to get used pretty much the same. And you're going to max out somewhere at 7 targets and 64 yards for both of these guys. And that's going to be 12 points, and it's going to be one of the top tight end weeks on the week. All right, guys.
To be with you guys today.
We will be with you Thursday, 3:45. We are Local Football Flavor, and we appreciate all the love. Like, follow, subscribe, and we'll see you 3:45 Eastern.